Welcome to 2 Hours, One Life. This is a completely free multiplayer game where you exist with other players on a perpetual server and you work to build civilizations and survive together in your families. This game is completely free to play and you can download it now by joining the Discord. Once you've joined the Discord, the bot will send you your login information. Make sure that you save this message because you'll need it later. You'll also get a link to download the game for the first time. Make sure you download it for the correct operating system, and just note that unfortunately this game is not available for Mac users. Once you've downloaded the game and you've entered both the email and key that the bot sent you in your Discord messages, you'll have to complete the tutorial, and upon completion you'll be able to be born into the game with other players on the server. Now if you want to be born in as a baby to a fertile mother, just click Login. If no fertile mothers are available, you'll spawn in Public Town, which is located at the center of the map. If you'd like to spawn in the wilderness as an Eve and play in your own city, you can do so by entering a seed code. Put a vertical bar after your username, and then use any series of characters or numbers that will be memorable to you. As long as you always have the same seed code entered, you will spawn with the same location on the map. So today we'll be logging in with a seed code. All right, so it looks like we have a decent spawn here. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. Oh, we've got a jungle to the north of us. There's some green. Kind of small green. So a couple of things that I want to do here. I'd like to name myself. I also don't really feel equipped to have babies right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the ability for myself to have children. So by saying this phrase, I've now made myself infertile. I won't have children in this life unless I say a command to revert that. Ooh, we seem to have found a beautiful green biome here. We have a merchant who can be useful later on in the game. We have salt water where we can fish. Let's go ahead and grab something to eat. And see if we can't find a well to settle. Well, speak of the devil. Here's one right here. So we're looking for a natural spring in order to build a well. It's important that you settle near a well so that you have access to water later on in the game. So I need to always keep an eye out on my food, especially as I begin to gather materials here. Whenever I eat a food, in the bottom left-hand side of my screen, it will say yum or meh. As much as possible, I'd like to eat only yum foods, which means I'm only eating one of each kind of food. I just ate a burdock root. If I eat another, it's meh. What happens when I eat meh is this bonus number will reset, and I won't get any bonus food. So I have a yum berry here. If I eat it, my chain goes up. I get additional bonus food beyond my base food meter. And overall, that allows me to eat less as the game progresses. I'm gonna grab some milkweed here, which can be used to make a rope. Here we have an orange tree, which is a recent add to the game, but it allows for a lot more wild foods, which can really help in the situation we're in. We found ourselves another milkweed. All right, now that we have a rope, we have a couple of choices on what we can make. But first, I'm going to make myself a snare, because I'd like to catch some rabbits. We will need quite a few of these to get started, so I'm going to grab as much milkweed as I see. I will also go ahead and make a hatchet, which will be useful later on. Alright, so we've gathered an extra rope, we have a hatchet, and we have a snare. Now before we do anything else, I want to make sure that I don't get lost. And in order to do that, I want to make a home marker. So to make a home marker, one of the first things I need is a sapling. I can cut this down with my sharp stone and put it in my basket. I will also need one of these round stones, so I want to make sure that I have one of these available. And once I have both my round stone and my skewer, I can take my skewer and hit it with the round stone in order to make a home marker. Now, whenever I leave this location, I'll get an arrow in the bottom of my screen pointing me back home. And we are going to do just that. We're going to head over into this savanna biome so that we can capture some rabbits. I'm just going to place the snare on the rabbit hole, and while I wait for the rabbit, I'm going to grab myself a carrot to eat. Alright, so I've captured the rabbit in my snare. Any second now, it should go to sleep. At which point I can relocate it. Humanely, of course. There we go. And now on to the next rabbit hole. So I need to always be keeping an eye on my food at the bottom of my screen. That in mind, I'm going to take a quick look around and see if I can't find something yummy to eat. Oh, aren't we lucky? We have found a jungle. We don't want to hang out inside of the jungle for too long because it's hot, but we can stand right here on the edge and grab ourselves a banana. Oh, and just our luck, we also have a wild pepper plant in here. It's a bit dangerous to go grab it, but it's definitely worth it to have an additional yum. Oh, and the best thing of all, we found ourselves a wild grapevine. As you can see, I now have a 5x bonus food on my food meter. That means I've done a decent job of eating variety so far. Oh, wow! Oh my goodness, we are so lucky. We have found ourselves an ore vein just southeast of our home. We're so close to home, this is exactly what we wanted to see. Okay, so now that we are back at camp, we have our rabbits. The next step is to find some clay. And clay will always generate in this bluish-purple biome. It can be a little dangerous because there are boars in this biome, the swamp. Ooh, you see it right there? That's bad news. Bad news boars, if you will. Alright, so we found a very perfect, very safe place to get clay. Each of these clay deposits, though, will only have 5 pieces of clay, so we're going to have to find quite a few of these to get our clay operation up and running. Okay, so now we have a decent amount of clay. Our next step is going to be to get adobe, which is a similar process to getting clay, but it does have an extra step. Alright, so we have to be in the thick of the swamp for this part, which is a little dangerous, but we're going to do our best to keep our eye out for boars. What we really need are these tool reeds, and we need at least 4 of them. Alright, so now that we have our 4 reeds, we're going to get 4 pieces of clay and combine the reeds with the clay to get adobe. So I grabbed a couple of extra rabbits and I grabbed the adobe that we're going to need. The final step here is going to be to gather some branches and some kindling. So all I'm doing is grabbing branches off of the nearby trees and using the hatchet that I made earlier to turn them all into kindling. The last tool that I need to make here is a fire bow drill. So I'm just going to take one of these long straight branches, hit it 2 times, one of these curved branches. First I'll make a bow frame, and then I'll add the drill part to it. Alright, so in order to start a fire, I'm going to grab myself a leaf, and I'm also going to grab some tinder. Once I have both of these items, I'll use my fire bow drill on my long straight shaft, and then take the leaf and transfer the fire onto the tinder. Finally, I add a bit of kindling, and that will keep my fire going for the moment. So now that I have my fire going, it's time for me to assemble my kiln. I don't really want to do it in this bluish biome because it's kind of dangerous. So I think I'm going to set it up right over here. To make the kiln base, I just take one adobe and hit it with this round stone. I can then add 2 more adobe to it to first get an oven and then a kiln. Now that my first fire has turned to coals, I'd like to cook my rabbits. So I'm going to cut down the home marker that I made earlier. I can always put it back up later. And I'm going to skin the rabbits that we caught with a flint chip. I can then take each of the rabbits, skewer them, and cook them on these hot coals. I always want to save 1 rabbit bone from this first rabbit to be a needle. It's crucial that we have a needle for smithing. I'll also want to cut one of these first in order to make a pouch. After I've cooked my rabbits, I want to make sure that I add kindling to keep the fire going. I'm going to use this fire to begin making some pottery. So first off, my town is going to need some bowls, and it's going to need some plates. I've laid out all of my clay, and by hitting the clay 2 times, I can make a plate. By hitting it 1 time, I can make a bowl. So the final thing that I want to make sure that I make before I start off on the pottery making journey is a set of tongs. So first I'm going to use a sharp stone to get a long straight shaft, and then I'm going to use a flint chip to make wooden tongs. Now that I've done that, I can transfer my fire over to the kiln, and once this lights, I'll be able to cook all of these clay items. This final piece of adobe is to cover the kiln. This is how we will make charcoal. So I'm going to head back into the swamp biome, and I'm going to grab as many goose eggs as I can readily find. And I'm also going to run down into the mountain biome, which is this gray biome. And I'm going to grab one of these flat rocks. I'll place the flat rocks on the coals. I'll grab my plates. And I'll make omelets by adding the goose eggs to the flat rock and then quickly using a plate to pick it up. So now that we have our first set of bowls and plates, and we have some backup food at camp, our next step is going to be getting together some of the things that we need to grow our own food. So there are these fertile soil deposits only in the green biome, and if I use a basket, I should be able to pick up soil. Now ideally, I want to keep my farm close to where I'm going to have my well. So now that I have my fertile soil piles, I'm going to use a clay bowl to separate these piles. Each soil pile represents 3 bowls of soil. The most efficient use for soil is to put 2 bowls together. If you do this, it only requires you to till the soil 1 time. Now, in order to till the soil, we could use a steel tool, but we're not ready for that yet. So we're going to go out and we're going to collect some more skewers. Oh, and we are so lucky here to have found ingredients for thread. All right, so we're back at camp. We're going to attach our thread to our needle, and we're going to use that to make our water pouch. We don't need it just yet, but since we found the thread, we might as well. Back to the farm, we did manage to find 2 skewers in addition to the one that we had earlier. Now I don't want to use this one because it says that it's a weak skewer, but these other 2, I should get a few uses out of them. All right, it looks like I got 4, not a bad number. And I still have a few left. So the most important thing as I start my farm is going to be variety, because as you see, I had to reset my yum chain yet again. So some of the easiest crops that we're going to be able to plant are things like onions, carrots, and corn. Now that we have each of the 3 starting crops that we want to plant, we're going to take them and plant them here in our rows. We'll then use one of these clay bowls to get water from a nearby pond. And I think there's one, yep, there's one here. You don't mind, do you, Mr. Goose? Nay, nay. In just a short amount of time, we should have domestic corn, seeds for domestic onions, and carrots growing. We don't want to forget about those, she says as she runs off into the wilderness. Running around in the mountains can be absolutely terrifying. There are plenty of things out here that can kill you instantly, so keep that in mind, like this wolf here. It is important, however, that we venture out into these mountains because we need iron. Oh, Mr. Wolf, please stop chasing me. Oh, wow, another ore vein. My goodness, we are lucky. Oh, wow, we actually have a desert nearby. That is very useful. We can eat cactus fruit, and we can also eat coconuts. This is a wonderful find. It's good to know that we have both a jungle and a desert nearby, because we're going to need both of them in order to craft most of the late game items. Oh my goodness, we found a 3rd ore vein? This is absolutely insane. Our luck is out of control today. Oh my goodness, and we have both a lemon and an apple tree? Oh, these are absolutely beautiful. And they're wild foods we haven't eaten yet. Delicious. All right, we've finally managed to make it back home, and we found 3 pieces of iron, but we also found a lot more along the way. So our crops are growing nicely. I'm going to hang around for a second because we would like to harvest some of these and maybe take them with us on our next exploration mission. Ultimately, we're going to need much more than just this 3 iron I managed to find. And just like magic, our onion's ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the blooming onion and I'm going to plant it in the hardened row, and now I have dry planted onions. There are a couple of things I can do to bring this row back, but one of the best things I can do is add a worm to it. And in order to find a worm, I first need to empty out a soil pit. Now that I've emptied out this soil pit, I can empty the worms. I can take one of these worms, add it to the hardened row, and over time this will come back. My carrots are also ready to be harvested. Now, I don't want to harvest every carrot because I would like some of them to turn into seeds so that I can plant more carrots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to harvest 3 for now. And I'm going to let these last 2 turn into seeds so that I can plant more. If I wait just a few minutes, 5 minutes, on this row, I will get carrot seeds. Okay, so I went out and I grabbed a little bit more iron to get us started. And in that time, my onions have nearly grown and my carrots will be turning to seed very shortly. I'm gonna eat some fresh corn. I'm also going to shuck an ear of corn to dry out. This, once it's dried, will be how I get more corn seeds. And just like that, my carrots have turned to seed. The unfortunate part is that once I do this, I lose the carrot row, so I will have to start it again. But thankfully, I emptied this fertile soil pit. I have my bowl here, and I can easily grab new soil. I'll also go ahead and water some more carrots just to make sure that I don't run out of food. Now that I've made some of my food and I have some growing over here in my farm, ooh, speaking of, we have onions. Now that I have some yummy foods readily available though, it's time for me to begin smithing. Earlier I made charcoal, but I'm going to need much more than just this bit of charcoal to get me going. So first I will take the charcoal out of the kiln. I will add more kindling. And I will start a fire somewhere near my forge. Once I have my fire going again, I can transfer the fire into the kiln, cover it with adobe immediately, and start the process of making charcoal. Now in order to smith, I'm going to need iron, but I'm also going to need a flat stone. Lucky for me, I grabbed one earlier when I was making omelets. The final things that I will need are wooden tongs, a round stone, and bellows. Now, in order to make bellows, you first need to make a set of tongs. Once you've made the tongs, you can add the water pouch that we made earlier. Now we have bellows without a nozzle. In order to get a nozzle, we're going to need to make it out of clay. Now, technically, you only need one ball of clay to do this. You take a ball of clay with any type of skewer, and you can get a wet clay nozzle. Now, because I like to run my forge efficiently, I'm also going to do some pottery making when I cook this. Okay, so I have some pottery items set up here. I'm going to remove my charcoal from the kiln. I'll add a new piece of kindling, and then I will light the kiln. And finally, I cover the kiln with the adobe to make our last bit of charcoal. I can take this cooked clay nozzle now and add it to my bellows to get complete bellows. This will be added to my kiln once the charcoal is done cooking. It looks like my carrots are ready to harvest. This time, because I have another row of seeds, I am going to harvest all of them. My worm row also has come back, so I can take my worm off of here and add it down here. Now that our charcoal's done cooking, we can add our bellows and we can get ready to prepare some iron. So in order to do any sort of iron working, you first need to take raw iron ore, which is this reddish color, and turn it into wrought iron. You do that by heating it inside of the forge and then smashing it with a round stone. Unfortunately, if you finish and the forge is still firing, there is no way to save the charcoal use, so you just have to wait for it to burn out. Now that we have made wrought iron, we're going to make steel. So each of these pieces of wrought iron is going to be added to a clay bowl along with a piece of charcoal. Once that's been done, we can cover it with a plate, and that will make a crucible. And before I fire these crucibles, I am once again going to have to make more charcoal. So in order to do that, I first need to remove the bellows from the forge in order to get a kiln. I can then add kindling and relight it. Okay, so now that we have another batch of charcoal ready, we can make steel. So I'm going to add my bellows back to the kiln in order to make a forge. And then I can light this forge on fire and take turns heating each of these crucibles. Once you've heated the crucibles, they will be hot and then they will cool. Once they've cooled, you can remove the lid and take out the steel. If you heat the steel up in a forge and you hit it with a round stone, you will get a smithing hammerhead. And that is going to be critical in making the rest of your tools. Now that I have steel, well, you can guess what I need to do next. More charcoal. So while I was waiting for the charcoal to cook, I went ahead and I grabbed a couple of extra flat rocks because that's going to make this next step a little bit easier. Now that I have everything to light my forge again, I'm going to use my smithing hammer to craft a couple of tools. Now once I heat these steel ingots and I place them on a flat rock and start hitting them with the smithing hammer, it's going to begin to cycle through all of the tool heads that are available in-game. I am looking specifically to make a shovel, an axe, and a hoe, each of which is going to help me keep my fires lasting longer and allow me to work on my farm. If I hit the ingot one time, I get an axe head. If I hit it 2 times, I get a hoe head. And if I hit it 9 times, I get a shovel head. Now these tool heads by themselves are not going to do me much good. So what I need to do is I need to take these long straight shafts and combine them with the tool heads in order to make tools. Now that I have an axe, I can chop down some of these trees. And once I chop the tree, I'm going to get firewood. Firewood is fantastic for 2 reasons. 1, if I use a steel axe to chop this firewood, I get 2 pieces of kindling instead of just the 1 I was getting from using a stone hatchet. The other great thing about firewood is that it allows fires to burn for longer. So once I have a fire going with kindling, if I add firewood to it, I will get a large, slow fire. This will burn for much longer, 4 minutes in fact, before it turns into a regular fire and I can add more firewood to it. The primary reason for wanting a shovel is so that I can dig my well and have much closer access to water for my farm. So that is going to be our next step, getting the well up and running. And in order to do that, I need to gather quite a few round stones. I can do that quite easily right now, but it's going to take me a lot of trips. And since I'm looking to bring back bulk, I think my next step is going to be to make a backpack. The fastest backpack that I can make in 2 hours 1 life is a reed backpack. In order to make a reed backpack, you need a rope. You will also need, you guessed it, reeds. So if I cut down one of these reeds, get myself a reed bundle, I can actually add this basket to the reed bundle and then tie it together with a rope to give myself a reed backpack. This won't last forever, but it does give me more carrying space. Now that I have both a reed backpack and a basket, I'll be able to carry 6 stones back at a time. Stones are found in several places, one of which being this gray mountain biome. So as I'm out here, I want to be very careful of wolves. Okay, I have my stones, 6 of them anyway. I'm going to start adding them to this natural spring. You'll see as I did that, it turned into a well site. In order to make a complete well site, I need 10 round stones, so I have to head back out for another batch. We now have piled up 10 stones on our well site. We can take our shovel and dig a well. Yay! Well time. Okay, this is fantastic because this means that we no longer have to walk all the way down to get water from the pond. We will be able to water our crops from right here. Speaking of crops, we have a few here, but we don't have enough. As you see, I had to reset my yum chain again. So that being the case, I say it's time we bring some more variety into our town. Starting with beans. We're also going to come back down into the scary jungle, and we're going to grab some tomatoes and some peppers. And luckily enough, we have 3 available rows to plant in. So we'll plant our beans and water those. Now these other 2 plants, peppers and tomatoes, require additional steps. So for the pepper plant, we need to use a flint chip on a wild pepper in order to get a pepper seed. We can then plant the pepper seed and water that to get domestic peppers. And the tomatoes are probably the most tricky. First, you have to add the tomatoes to a bowl. You will get tomato seed pulp, and this has to sit for a little bit and ferment. While I'm waiting for that to ferment, I'm just going to get a couple more rows of plants going here. And instead of using my skewer this time, I'm going to use the brand new hoe that we made. I'm going to plant some more corn down here on the bottom row. I'll take a flint chip and I'll use it on the ear of corn that I dried out earlier, and that will give me a corn kernel that I can then plant in the soil. Okay, now looking at our bowl of tomato seed pulp, we can see that it has fermented, both by its name and the fact that it's turned slightly darker. The next step is to add a bowl of water to the fermented pulp, and then drain that water back out into an empty bowl. Once you do that, you will have a bowl full of tomato seeds. You can use that bowl directly on a row, or you can right-click the bowl to just take out a single seed and plant it. Once you've planted it, water it, and we're almost done. Tomatoes actually have an additional step beyond the other crops. One of the unique things about bean plants is that while they are growing, they turn into green bean plants. Now you can leave a green bean plant and it will turn into dry beans, which are very useful. Or you can use a bowl on the green bean plants to get something that is immediately edible, a bowl of green beans. Since we've been starving, I think that's a great idea. But I also went out and I grabbed a second bean from the wild so that we can also have dry beans in our town. Now that our tomato has sprouted, one of the things that we need to do to make sure that it keeps growing is add a skewer to it. Once we've added a stake to the tomato, it will continue to grow, and then we will be able to eat tomatoes. Which, I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't ever eat a whole raw tomato in real life, but in this game, to increase this number, absolutely I'll eat a tomato. You bet your bunny behind I will. Oh, yummy, our peppers have grown. That is delicious. So now that we have the basics, we have our main tools that we'll need to survive here in the short term, and we have a little bit of a farm going with some variety. Our next step is going to be to make sure that we get some better clothing, because one of the things you may have noticed is that I have a temperature meter down here, and I have been very cold for most of my life. That is attributing to how quickly my food over here deteriorates. So the closer my temperature is to the middle of this meter, the slower my food will decay. So what I'd like to do is use this snare to head out and get myself some more rabbit furs. You'll notice as I'm hunting that some rabbits have babies and some rabbits do not. If you hunt a rabbit family whole, the rabbits will come back faster than if you hunt just a regular rabbit whole. So it's not like the rabbit will disappear forever, but it's better to hunt ones that repopulate quickly. Oh dear, we're getting old. All right, so we have a few pieces of rabbit fur here. We're going to also need some thread. Alright, well it took some time, but we finally found enough thread to make a little outfit for ourselves. Not perfect, but it's a start. So we're going to take this needle and thread first and combine it with 4 furs plus 2 cut furs in order to get a backpack. This backpack is better because 1, it won't disappear over time like this one will, and 2, it can hold 4 items instead of just 3. Next, I'm going to sew a single piece of rabbit fur in order to get pants. And then I'm going to sew 2 more pieces of cut fur in order to get shoes for myself. Now the only thing that I have left to make is a shirt. Always have to stop for boars. Alright, so I'm going to stack up these final 3 furs here, add my thread to my needle, and make myself a rabbit fur shawl. Now that I have a full outfit on, my temperature is slowly starting to creep up towards the center. Now I don't have the warmest clothing on of all, but this primitive clothing is actually pretty warm, all things considered, and it should keep my food from dropping as quickly as it has been. Oh my, we've gotten old. Where has the time gone? Well, let's kind of recap what we've accomplished today, shall we? We were able to make a snare, a stone hatchet, and a fire bow drill, all of which we needed to start this little camp here. We also put together a kiln and a forge, and we were able to not only make some pottery, but we did some smithing as well. Yum. Speaking of yum, we made quite a bit of food, a few cooked foods, but mostly we were able to start our farm. Now this farm isn't nearly as large as it needs to be, but it does have some food variety, which is going to be good for us as we continue our base. And lastly, we were able to dig our well and get together some food to help keep us warm. So what do we want to do next time? That's a great question. I think probably what we'll do is we'll start thinking about layout. As we just first start off a civilization, layout isn't really our main consideration other than, okay, there are boars over here, we probably don't want to die to them. But we aren't really thinking about town planning. So we'll think a little bit about, we'll explore the area first of all, and then we'll think a little bit about where we'd like to put some buildings, ultimately where we would like for our farm to end up, how large we would like it to be, what shape we would like it to be, things like that. So we'll start planning some of our layout and organizing a little bit. And we'll also start cooking for real. So this cooking that we did today, this is just the basics, right? We did cooking on hot coals, but we have the opportunity to do some real cooking and help ourselves from starving or ever even resetting this number. So we will, in our next life, make an oven and experiment with cooking, as well as just, like I said, explore the area, city plan a little bit. It should be good. Anyway, I thank you all for joining me and for watching this today. If you enjoyed this playthrough, please do let me know, and I will post more in the future. I think we have a decent start here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we can accomplish in future episodes. But anyway, thank you all for hanging out with me. This has been a magically fun time. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, wherever you are in the world, and that's about it. I'ma die now. Bye!